Welcome to the Progressing Recruiters' Lives Everywhere podcast, brought to you by Amoria Bond. Join us as we talk to our board members and leaders to gain valuable tips, advice and inspiration for your own professional life. From climbing the career ladder to the evolution of the recruitment industry, we'll cover it all. Within our industry, there are no limits to how far you can progress, and we want to show you how and why working in recruitment could be the best decision for your life and career. I'm Jenny Walsh, Regional Talent Attraction Manager based in Amoria Bond's Manchester office. And in this episode today, I'm talking to Fiona Gleeson, our Group CFO. Welcome, Fiona. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you.
So I guess to kick us off, please could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you started in the field of finance?
Yeah, of course. I think really I got my love of finance from both of my parents. They both worked in kind of finance environments. They both worked full time. They also my dad had a couple of businesses as well. And they both instilled into me that, you know, you had to be completely independent. You had to work really hard. You weren't going to get handed anything on a silver platter. In fact, I can remember my mother telling me exactly that once. So it's very much around you need to make your own way in life. My mum actually she was a manager of a bank. And I remember saying to her, because I was quite good at maths and I thought I'd be quite good at finance rather than going into kind of an engineering role because I didn't feel that suited my skill set. And I remember saying, I might just go working in a bank or something like that. And she said, you're just saying that because your sister and I work in a bank. You need to find something different to do, something that you're going to enjoy. So I kind of started thinking about, working with businesses and maybe going into accountancy. And that's where it kind of triggered really when I was about 15, 16, something like that. I started to think, well, actually, I might enjoy looking at different types of business and understanding how they work in more detail. So that was kind of the first seeds that were planted then, and I thought I'd be actually quite good at it and also potentially enjoy it.
Great. And how did you become our CFO? So tell us a little bit about your journey to this point.
Well, I've worked for a handful of companies prior to joining Amoria Bond, and every business I've worked at, has taught me a lot of things. So I made the conscious decision after taking my A-levels to move into an accountancy practice. I purposely didn't go into industry straight away because I thought I would enjoy actually dealing with the books and records of various businesses, auditing businesses, and like I said, actually understanding the different types of businesses and understanding how they become profitable and that kind of thing. So I went straight into practice, into small practices. I didn't want to join one of the big four accountancy firms, because again, I didn't want to be pigeonholed. I wanted to get a broad understanding of a lot of the roles, because I didn't really know whether I'd like working in purchase ledger or working in audit. I wanted to understand more of the tax side of things and getting an overall view of businesses. So I went into I worked for 3 different small practices. I managed to work my way up to audit manager. And at that point, when I was an audit manager, it became less interesting because I had the same client base every year. So I kind of knew what I was going to be working on. And at that point, I'd qualified as an accountant. And I thought, actually, this could be the right time for me to actually see if I I would enjoy working in industry. So I found a job. I became FC of a PLC. And that, again, it was working on statutory accounts and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, I'll try it. And if I don't enjoy it, I can move back to practice. But actually, I loved it. It was great. I was working on various projects. I was given, because I was working in the head office, I would be given certain tasks to do, look at the profitability of certain projects within the business. And it really felt like I was adding value and making a difference to that particular business. And then I moved on to my previous role, which again, I started off, I was a divisional FD. So working for actually a healthcare staffing agency. So that was my first role in kind of for a recruitment business. And I had various roles within that business. I started off as divisional FD, but then as the business grew, there were a number of acquisitions and we kind of merged with a larger business. My role became more corporate and I started working at the head office, working on various projects, refinancing, making bolt-on acquisitions. And it became really interesting, and my experience was very varied, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a fantastic time, had great colleagues, some of which I'm still friends with now. So it's got a very, very special place in my heart. But I'd actually been there almost 13 years, and it was kind of when I'd come up to the 11-year mark, I was asked by a colleague to cover my original role because the person that had filled that role had gone on mat leave. So I actually went back to my roots within the business and started getting involved in the operational side of the business, dealing with a finance team. So I'd gone from having this central corporate role, dealing with M&A and working very closely with the CFO and the CEO and the board, which was really interesting and fantastic experience. But I kind of went back to my roots, working with the finance team on a day-to-day basis. And I thought, actually, I'm more of a team player. I like to play in teams rather than just be this lone wolf, this person looking for, specific acquisition targets. And I thought, actually, I want to go back to a more traditional FD role. So that was when I said, look, I'm looking to leave. And I started looking on the market. And I came across Amoria Bond and actually liked the profile of the business. We had quite an in-depth interview process. And when I met each of the directors, it was kind of the passion that they had about driving the business forward, wanting to progress the business. And I think because I was coming from a larger business, I was pleasantly surprised at how forward thinking everybody at Amoria Bond was. I thought, actually, for a smaller business, they're making quite significant changes and actually trying to, break down barriers, which is really exciting. So I went through the whole process, but I actually thought I was really impressed by everyone that I met during that process. I'm very excited about how quickly the business was growing, the path that it was going on, and all of the targets and that they'd set themselves, and also the awards that they'd previously won. So it's then that, luckily, fortunately enough, they offered me the role. And, it didn't take me long to actually decide that, yes, I wanted to join. And I've not looked back. It's been great fun. It's been challenging at times, and there's still a lot of improvements that we want to make, and we're in the process of making. But yeah, it's going really well, and I'm really enjoying it.
Amazing. Sounds like a really exciting and varied journey. And you touched on this a little bit, obviously starting off in practice, moving into industry. And you've mentioned a couple of things that you really enjoyed throughout that journey. But what would you say makes working in the recruitment industry so fulfilling for you?
I think from my experience, and this does sound a little bit of a cliche, but for this business and my previous business, it's been the desire to provide the best service. Both businesses have been market leaders in their sector and market leaders on the provision of services that they actually provide. So for the last 15 years, I've worked in an environment that has constantly wanted to improve its service levels. they've wanted to grow the business, they've set challenging targets, they've actually held a mirror up to themselves and said, I've been in many, many management meetings where the question has been posed to senior managers, what can we do better? Or, we haven't quite hit our targets. That could be from an employee survey, or it could be from feedback from specific clients. But it was always trying to make incremental changes to not just be the best, but maintain that position within the market. Because the minute you stand still, the minute you think, oh, I've achieved it, we're doing really well, what a great business, is the minute the competitors overtake you and provide a better service than you're actually doing. So it's that desire to constantly improve. And I think that I feel like I'm a little bit like that myself. I always want to improve. So I like being in that. I like being in competitive environments, and I like being in environments that actually want to constantly improve.
Absolutely. And within that, I guess, in such a fast-paced, challenging and demanding role, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance?
That can be a challenge. And it ebbs and flows. I mean, certainly my previous role was very project based. So there are times where my workload was through the roof, and then times when we had quieter periods. But I actually make a conscious effort. I set myself targets, and I focus very much, obviously, on my mental and my physical health. With regards to physical health, I will give myself specific targets, and that can be as simple as, for example, last week, I hadn't gone to the gym, I hadn't exercised very much. So this week, I've given myself targets of the number of times I want to exercise. So I've been to the gym, for example, 3 times this week, and I want to increase that number before I get to Saturday. So there's certain things, I will make a promise to myself, for example, that I will run park run Saturday morning. And it's a great social occasion because there's, I'm a member of a running club, so there will be at least 6 of us that will do park run together, and we'll go for brunch. So it's kind of giving myself that downtime and that breather. And at times there's been times where I've actually had to make sure I carve out that time out of the diary, to just so that I can keep things ticking over, keep my physical health. But the thing for me is I notice enormously, if I go to the gym before I work, my work rate goes through the roof. I am so much more focused. I achieve so much more. So if I take that, it can be 45 minutes out of the diary for myself, and I train for 30 minutes, I get back to the keyboard, and the keyboard is practically smoking because I'm just very, very focused. So the mental benefit of actually having some physical activity, helps me enormously. From a mental health perspective, I'm a great believer in self-help books. I like to, I'm always one to take recommendations. I'm reading a book that a friend's given me recently that I've been talking to members of my team about. And this book in particular is about getting a good balance within life. The gentleman's got 5 children, actually. So he's got a hectic family life as well as a hectic professional life. And it's about finding the ways that works for you, and trying to just find little windows in your diary. So it could be, I'll think to myself, okay, I'm just going to read for 15 minutes before I go to bed. Something like that. I'll just I'll set myself little targets. I'm going to read a chapter in this book because I know that will help me unwind after a busy day. So I just try to kind of break it down and give myself small targets that I feel are achievable. And, sometimes I don't achieve them, and I do occasionally beat myself up about it, but I try not to. I think, you've got a heavy workload, you've been very busy. Okay, you've only gone to the gym X number of times this week. Let's try to make that, rather than twice a week, try and make that 3 times or 4 times a week. just see if you can increase it the following week. So I try not to beat myself up when I do set a target, but I don't always achieve it.
No, some really nice tips there about well-being, and it's good to hear as well, because I know it's really great to set like really clear targets and goals. That's the best way to achieve them, but you're not ultimately always going to achieve them, are you? And like you say, everybody naturally can sometimes beat themselves up about it, but I guess it's about resetting and just re-going again. Cool.
Yeah.
So what piece or pieces of advice would you give to young professionals who are just starting out their careers within the recruitment industry?
Well, I would say that really we are all evolving as individuals. So I'd say there's always room for improvement. Try to be very objective and try to kind of be very reflective. The one thing that I try to do is as I said, there's always room for improvement. So in any situation, I do try to sit back, not necessarily, I don't do this on a daily basis because I don't always have the capacity to do it. But there are certain points during the week where I do actually sit back and think, what could I have done better? How could I have handled that situation better? What should I have done? How should I have worded that email? I could have done that slightly differently. So I would say try to just step back and reflect. You can learn from many people, and it's regardless of age or experience. You can always take some learning from pretty much every situation. So I would just try to have the foresight not to take everything personally, and just to stand back and reflect and think about how you can personally improve. And again, it comes down to small incremental changes so that you actually become the best version of yourself, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing advice. And typically those who are the best at self-analysis are the best at then implementing and learning and, like you say, improving. So yeah, I think that's really, really important. And last but not least, as a leader at Amoria Bond, what moment stands out to you as your proudest achievement?
I think I wouldn't say anything for me personally that I've achieved, but us as a business, I would think winning the ED&I award last year, that was kind of a really defining moment for me, because that was one of the reasons I joined the business, because everybody collectively is so passionate about ED&I and making Amoria Bond the most inclusive working environment as possible. So that was kind of, it was very satisfying to know that actually we are moving in the right direction, and externally we're giving people the right impression that we're actually making progress in that area. So I was really pleased that we'd managed that. The other thing I would say is that I really enjoy watching people progress, particularly around promotions and that kind of thing. I like it when we give people targets within the team for them to achieve to get to the next progression on their career path. And it's really, really pleasing to see people respond positively to that and actually step up and try to make improvements to get them to the next level. So it's an area that I want to improve for group services within Amoria Bond. But I'm hoping, certainly in the first quarter of this year, that we may have, fingers crossed, 1 or 2 promotions to announce, which that's the kind of thing that really pleases me, because you do see people progressing, people improving, and that will help us provide a better service. So I think that those are the 2 things for me that I kind of get the most out of.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you very much for joining me, Fiona. It's been really great hearing all about your journey and your insights. So yeah, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for everyone for joining us on today's episode. And for more information about a career in recruitment, please check out our website, amoriabond.com.